Hello everyone, it is Press Any Button with the eventual comeback, and as always we are back in Unity with another tutorial. And in this part we're going to be continuing on with our Invaders series. So as you remember last time, we got all of our invaders moving in a uniform motion, and they all have their own idle animations. But let's think about what the purpose of our enemies is. The purpose of our enemies is to antagonize us as the player. So how are they going to do that? Well, we're just going to implement the same functionality that we'd see in your classic Invaders game for the enemies, which is to shoot shots at us. And I've been able to set up a script that allows us to both control when our enemies will shoot and where the shots will be coming from, which will be a different enemy each time. So this guy could shoot, or this one could shoot, or this one could shoot. Now, as always, before we get straight into things, let's just take a look at how this actually works in real time through a little demonstration that I can set up by pressing the play button. So here we have our enemies moving and they are animated, and there you see it, the first shot, and if we're lucky we'll get another shot. So I'm going to try to position myself in the path of the enemy shot, and as you can see there, our tank disappears. And that is what we are going to be achieving this lesson. Now don't worry, we can have all of our enemies shooting, not just this one, but for demonstration's sake I just set up that one because it's much quicker. So let's exit the play mode and get started. I'm just going to strip down my version of the game so far to make sure that we're roughly at the same place. So through the magic of editing, I will be back in a second. Okay, so here we can see the game as you people at home will have it, and the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create those enemy shots, and the way we're going to do that is by first creating a new script. So if you go to your scripts folder and then right click and then go to create and then C# script, you'll be able to create a new script. But for me, I've already got the script working, so I don't need to do that. But when you've created your new script, simply just slowly double click here where the name of the script is display and label it ally destroy. And then once you have that, let's open it up and move over to mono develop. Now it feels good to be back in the bright white and blue-ish mono develop, and the first thing that you'll be presented with is a blank script. Now it could be easy for me to say I'll just copy this script, but let's take a look at how you can build this script from things that you already have just for convenience sake. So we have our script here, and if we go back to Unity we see that it's very similar to our enemy destroy script, which is going to be tagged a little differently because I've made some modifications to it. So we're going to open up that script also. So now that we have the enemy destroy script open, you'll see that there's some differences here, like how the other .game object is referenced. But let's just talk about some modifications to make to this script. So as you can see here, I have just other .game objects. So you're going to want to delete any other text that follows this, just to leave other .game object in these brackets next to the destroy function. And you might want to have the other .tag as alien, and we'll mess around with some tags later. And the reason why I'm telling you to make these modifications is so that we can add this script to our player bullet so that it carries the destruction script instead of our enemy game objects, because having things done that way ensures that we don't run into any technical issues with referencing objects and so many different things that I had to deal with in making this tutorial. Now we want to first select everything that we have in the enemy destroy script, and then hit Ctrl C, and then go over to that ally destroy script and then hit Ctrl V. I don't really need to, but I will do it for demonstration's sake, and as you can see everything's pretty much the same. But one thing that I'm going to change here is that I'm going to have this other .tag down here referenced as tank. Now if you just want to take a look at that to make sure that you have everything right, we'll just pause for a second and then move on back into Unity. And then another modification that I would suggest would be to remove the line destroy game object, because for some reason when we release our enemy bullet from the enemy game objects, they tend to be destroyed by the enemy game object, which isn't something that we want because they'll never get to our tank. And this doesn't really change how the gameplay works. If our tank dies, then that's game over to begin with, so it doesn't really matter. And the bullet is disposed of eventually because of the box collider that we have set up around the entire scene. Now that we have everything sorted out here, let's just hit File and Save, and then return to Unity. Now that we've got our scripts sorted, all we have to do is add those scripts to a component. And because we've already got a beam coming from our player game object that works, why not use that beam again, but just change some of its properties so that it becomes a beam that can be used by the enemy. So as you can see, I'm already in the prefabs folder, and I'm going to drag this shot prefab into here. I'm going to hit Ctrl C and Ctrl V, and now we've got a copy of our shot 1 prefab. We're going to get rid of shot 1 and keep the copy, and then let's hit add component, go to scripts, and find that ally destroy script. So we're going to add that, and we're going to call this enemy beam 1 because I already have another enemy beam. Now in terms of the speed of our beam, I'm going to make this a negative number, so I'm going to make this beam travel by -3. And the reason for doing so is going to be explained later into this part, and you'll actually be able to see it in a second when I demonstrate what this beam can actually do. So now that we've got our beam here set up, we need to make sure that it's in the right position, and I believe that this beam is right here. Well, by looking at the transformation values, we can see that it's on the right plane of the z-axis, so we don't have to worry about that. Now let's first drag that into our prefabs folder to make that a new prefab, and then let's resize it a little bit, I think. So on the y-axis, we're going to make it about 0.75 of its original size, and that should be good. Remove this from the scene, and then let's press play and see what happens when we drag these beams into our scene. So when we go in to see what this beam is actually capable of, the first thing that we find is that it actually destroys our alien game objects. And this is an issue because they're going to be the ones that are firing this beam. Now why might this be? Well, this is because we have that enemy destroy script still attached to these game objects, and as I said before, that causes some issues, and that's why we're primarily attaching these destruction scripts to our beam. Now let's see what happens if I let go of this beam. Okay, so it did travel in the way that we want it to, and it did destroy our player object. It was destroyed by the boundary that we've created in previous parts. Now, as I said before, I'll explain why we made this a negative number. The reason why we made this a negative number is because we have the script set to transform up. So if we take a look at our shot script, we have the direction that our beam is going to be traveling in as transform.up. Now, what's the opposite of up? Down. And Unity doesn't actually have transform.down. So what we had to do there instead was to use negative numbers. So we moved by -3, which I think I'm going to bump up to about -4. And then I'm going to just make this the original size. Now the next part of what we need to do is pretty simple, but I'm just going to do it for one of our enemies, which is to remove this enemy destroy script. So we're going to click on this cog and then hit remove component. Now to continue, we want to make that script that allows these enemies to shoot from their position and to shoot whenever we want them to. And to do that, we're going to go to our scripts folder, we're going to right click again, create C#, and as per usual, I've already got a script prepared. So we are going to call our script enemy shots, and you just want to title it like that. But one thing that I will add is before we go back into monodevelop, we're going to need to make sure that our tags are correct. Now we're only using the boundary tag, and we're going to have another tag called alien. So we want to go to our tank game object or our player game object, select that, and make sure that the mesh collider is set to is trigger, just in case we have any issues with that. And we'll be resizing this slider in a future part. But we're going to go over to here And just to refresh your minds on how to create a new tag, we go to the tag section, we go to add tag, and then here you have a list of the tags that you already have in your game. And then we can add a new tag, and I could call it tank 1 or something. I'll probably spell that, yeah, tanks or tank 1, anything, and that will be fine. But because I already have my tags here, I won't be messing around with that. And you also need to have an alien tag so that that enemy destroy script that we worked on earlier will work to destroy just the aliens and not our player without any issues. So let's continue on into mono develop and see what we can do with that enemy shot script. So here we have our enemy shot script, and I'm just going to leave this up here because this is quite a complicated script and we don't really have anything else to work from except from some of the fire rate elements that we see in our player shot script, or whatever script that we have set up to allow us to shoot as the player. So let's deconstruct this script a little bit so we have a good understanding of what it can do. In general, the script allows us to control when an enemy will start cycling through its shots, where an enemy will start cycling through its shots, and what shots the enemy will produce. Now all of these things can be manipulated by us, as you can see, because we've got public, 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 public and private floats and different variables set up. So let's start off with public game object shot. Now this is where we are able to assign the game object shot, which moves by itself, but by assigning this game object we know what we want to instantiate, which is going to be shot. So we're going to drag our current enemy shots into this box when it appears on the inspector in Unity. Now we have public transform bullet spawn, and for this we can just drag in the alien that the script is attached to, and that is shooting the beam, to make sure that the bullet is coming from an accurate place. Now we have a public float, which is start wait, and this is a slightly more complicated part of our script, where start wait allows us to manipulate the amount of time we want it to take before our script actually starts acting, and that will be presented to us as a float, which is just a number and given in seconds. And we all understand what fire rate does, and we've looked a little bit at next fire before. So all of this script down here should be pretty familiar to you guys. And over here we have the script that allows us to involve that start wait functionality. And through this we can make sure that our enemies don't shoot too often, and they shoot exactly when we want them to, so that when the game starts they don't all shoot at once, and the places where all of our bullets are coming from are varied and even and designed as we'd want it to be. And we just want to make sure that here we have void start. Once you've done everything with your script here, you just want to go to File and Save, and then we'll return to Unity for the last time. Now that we're back in Unity, let's attach that script to one of our enemies, just to get a good idea of how this script will be implemented for the rest of our alien game objects. So let's just click on one of the objects, and then let's go to Add Component, Scripts, and select Enemy Shots. Now if we take a look at the inspector for this game object, we can see all of those public floats that we added in when creating this script. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to go over to this prefabs folder, find our enemy beam 1 or enemy beam, and then drag that into where it says shot. And then where it says bullet spawn, we want to find our alien in the hierarchy or either in the scene, and we want to drag them over to that area. And then let's set our start wait to 1 second and our fire rate to 1. Now if we hit that play button, we'll be able to see this script in action. So as you can see, the aliens are moving as we have animated them, and if I move into the way of this bullet, my tank will be destroyed, but at the same time the alien emitting this shot is not being destroyed. Now the fire rate's a little bit high, and I can manipulate that. I can make it fire rate 5 or something, where it's a lot calmer. And I can also increase the start wait, which will help when I'm attaching this script to more alien game objects, so that we have a little unevenness in the way that they're shooting their beams. But for today, that is it. This has been sort of a long tutorial, I'm guessing, by the recording time. But it's good to be back, and I'll be hoping to continue on with this series later into this week. But as always, it's been a pleasure making this content for you guys. And if you like this video, then you can go ahead and leave a like or leave a comment. If you have any questions, the comment section is your place. I will leave a link to this build, so if you don't have enough time to catch up or having a little bit of trouble, then you can jump straight to where I am right now. And I guess that will be me signing out as Press Any Button, and I will be back another time.